losers, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with the books that I ended up reading in February, and this includes the couple of things that I read for the My Bloody Valentine readathon, which was such a blast. First, I'm gonna get into my stats for the month because my brain likes useless information. In total this month, I ended up reading 7 books. 1 was a new release, 5 I owned previous to this year, and 1 was one that I rented from the library. In total, I read 2,134 pages, which is about 76 pages a day. 4 of the books I read this month were horror, 2 I would consider more like thriller, and 1 was a nonfiction, like a medical nonfiction book. The oldest book I read this year was published in 1989. Then we jumped to 1996. I read a book that was published in 2008, one that was published in 2019, 2 that were published in 2020, and 1 from 2023. So to start out, I need to talk about the book that I listened to on audio this month. This is Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Doughty. I read her book Smoke It's in Your Eyes last month, and this one was available at my library, so I was like, what the fuck, let's pick it up. This one, the format was a little bit different because it was like she was answering questions, and they were questions that like children asked about death and about funerals and, you know, how we take care of dead bodies and like what's gonna happen after you die kind of stuff. I mean, at least like what happens to your body on this earth. Just questions like that. I didn't love this format. Felt like it was definitely, you know, meant to be read by a younger audience. And there were some jokes in the book that really fell flat for me, but I just like, I think that that is really hard to pull off in that format. You know what I mean? And there was, I don't know, there was a book that I read a couple years ago that was like that too. And it just doesn't work for me. So like this was an interesting book, but I don't think it was as interesting as Smoke It's in Your Eyes. And I don't think that the author did like a bad job. It's just that the format didn't work for me. I didn't know it was going to be like that. Otherwise I probably would have skipped it, but whatever. I mean, like, I think Doughty is really interesting, so I'm going to continue reading shit that she puts out, but this one just wasn't quite it for me. Anyway, on to the physical copies I have with me today. The first one here is Crota by Owl Goingback, and this was published in 1996. This is like a vintage paperbacks from hell type book, published by Signet, and this is an interesting story. This is kind of like a creature feature. We're following this man, Skip, who is the sheriff of like this small community, and all of a sudden these like really grisly murders are happening, and it almost looks like an animal attack, right? But it's like, this animal would have to be fucking huge to be able to rip apart a body like this. And it's just like not typical predator behavior. Like predator animals, they don't just attack things just to attack for the most part. You know what I mean? Like if they take down another animal, they're probably going to eat it, things like that. So it's just like not typical. And he really doesn't know what's happening. And then we also kind of follow a man named Jay Littlehawk, and he is a man who's lived in this area. He's native, and he thinks that this the creature who is attacking people is like this ancient evil creature called the Crota, and the Crota is not a typical like animal creature. It's smart. It's powerful, and it could like devastate everything if this is out and about and attacking people. So, you know, they have to work together to get rid of this thing, but like no normal man can kill it. So what's it going to take? You know what I mean? And I think something that I found really interesting in this book that I didn't expect is that like a pretty significant amount of this that takes place in this like found city almost. In a cave system, and that was so cool. It definitely gave me Descent by Jeff Long vibes, which is a book that I really love. So all in all, like, Crota was a great experience. It was fast-paced. It really just started out with a bang. It was visceral and gory, and there's lots of guts and like blood and gross stuff. So it was really good. And if you have the chance to pick this up, I believe that this has been reprinted within the last couple of years. So there is an ebook. I believe there is a newer edition that's been printed, like I said, of this. So I don't think that this is one of the like paperback from hell type books that's like super hard to find. So if you get the chance, I'd pick this up for sure. I also picked up Prom Dress by Lael Littke. This was published in 1989, and this is kind of like a cursed objects type book. We follow a teenager named Robin who works after school and on the weekends for an elderly lady. So she's just like there helping her with, you know, day-to-day stuff that she might need. Robin asks if she can borrow a dress for a dance rehearsal she has coming up where they're doing like, I think like Charleston. So it's like she's looking for a certain type, a dress from a certain era, right? And this woman, I think her name is Miss Catherine, might have it, right? So Miss Catherine says, sure, go ahead, you can borrow one, but don't even think about borrowing the cream colored dress in the attic, right? So Robin goes up there and she's like, all right, like, I don't care. This dress is great. But then she sees the cream colored dress and it's like, it calls to her. She becomes kind of obsessed with it. And this dress just like brings devastation to everyone who wears it. People just feel like have this compulsive need to get their hands on this dress for whatever event they might need it for. And, you know, it never ends well for them. So this was kind of fun. We follow a couple different characters, but they all like tie together in this story. So I thought that this was well written and it was easy to read and it was fun and all in all like a great point horror book. Then I read The Brightlands by John Fram, which is, I don't know, kind of, I've seen it labeled as a horror book, but like, I don't really think that fucking matters, right? But anyway, I found it to be more of like almost like a crime thriller. In this we follow, well, this kind of jumps around. There's a lot of point of views. I would say the person who is like the main character in this though, his name is Joel. He's an adult and he's coming back to like the small town in Texas where he grew up. He's kind of made it big where he's at, but he has never felt comfortable where he grew up because he is a gay man and there was kind of like a scandal when he was a teenager that, you know, affected him. And so he really like does not like to come back, but his younger brother Dylan is having kind of a tough time. So Joel thinks he's gonna go out there and, you know, just see what's up with his brother, be a better brother. But when Joel gets out there, very soon after, Dylan just like goes missing and no one knows what's going on. It's suspicious. Joel has a hinky feeling about it. And we spend this book basically trying to find out, you know, what happened to Dylan and why it happened. And it jumps around a lot. We follow many different points of view, but like I said, Joel is like, I'd say like the main character in this. And, you know, we go back into his past, you know, you find out what the scandal was and things like that. But underneath it all, there's kind of like this supernatural thing that pops up here and there. And I just like really did not end up understanding that. Like when we got to the conclusion of the book, I'm like, okay, but like, why was that even here? It just really didn't seem to add anything to the story. It made it confusing, I think, because why was it there? I don't know. So yeah, I just like don't fucking know why that was, why the author felt the need to include that. It was like you either needed more of it or you needed none of it, I think, because the, you know, what was mingled, what was interlaced in the story was just weird. And like the conclusion was weird. So I don't fucking know. If you've read this, maybe you can shed some light on that. If it clicked for you, I'd really like to know. But for me, I don't know. I mean, I didn't think this book was bad. It was readable, but it was very long and I really did not like all the jumping around. And like I said, the supernatural thing, it's like, why was that there? I don't know. Maybe that's why maybe that's what makes it considered a horror book, but it was almost like it was put in as an afterthought after the book had been written, and I don't understand it. I also picked up Confessions by Kanae Minato. This was published in 2008. This has been translated from Japanese. Who's the translator? Steven Snyder. This book was really interesting. The way it was written was really interesting. This is about a teacher who teaches what we would consider like middle school grades. So like 11, 12, 13-year-old around their kids. And she has been at this school for a few years, and she's a single mom. She has a young daughter, and one day her daughter turns up at the school dead. The teacher here has good reason to believe that some of her students were involved in this. So you get that, right? But I think what is most interesting in this is that it's like you get other people's side of the story, and like people you wouldn't even expect, like relatives of the people suspected of being murderers, stuff like that. So like it was really interesting. The end was wild, unexpected, and fantastic. Like, what a great way to end this story. And it's a good revenge story where you get into the minds of the people involved, and it was just well written and interesting, and I really liked this. I thought that this was good. This is one that I chose as a 5-star prediction, and I don't think it was quite that, but one I would recommend for sure, especially if you're trying to read like literature and translation, things like that. If you're trying to branch out, this was good. Then I read Along the Path of Torment by Chandler Morrison. This one came out in 2020, and this was a tougher read for sure. The content was gruesome and disturbing. In this we follow a dude named Ty. He's like in his late 20s, and he is the assistant, I think. He holds some sort of like gopher-like position for his uncle, who is a producer in Hollywood. And he isn't like a big star producer, but he really is kind of well-known and big in like the underworld type stuff, like not necessarily black market, but maybe kind of that. But really he is orchestrating a sex ring, and one that involves children. So like that is super disturbing. Like it's troubling and hard to read for sure. The content, it gets really fucking gruesome. Like turned my stomach. Couldn't read this with anybody else home like type of book, because it just like threw me into this space that was it's like the first night I was reading it, I was like probably at the worst fucking part in the book, and like I didn't really expect it to come up the way it did, and it did, right? And then like my kid walks into the room and like needs to talk to me about something, and I'm like, I just can't read this like in front of other humans. I guess like I thought this book was okay. Obviously the content is what it is, and I knew that going into it, so like I'm not saying that I didn't like the book because of that, but I did think that this was almost a ripoff. Like not a ripoff, I shouldn't say that, but when I was reading it, I just kept thinking like this is trying to be kind of like Hollywood American Psycho, right? Modern day Hollywood American Psycho. That's all I could think about. The parallels between this character Ty and like Pat Bateman, it's just like there are so many things. And I don't want to get too far into it, because I think that if you should read it, I don't want to, or if you would like to read it, I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, he was just kind of Pat Bateman, and I really thought that the main character in this was so much like the main character in his novella #Thigh Gap, which I read just a couple months ago, and it was like, it's like he just has this idea for this person stuck in his head and he can't get it out like the author does, you know what I mean? So I don't know, like it was, despite the content, it was easily readable. It made me feel kind of bad, but like it didn't make my brain have to think. It's such a weird juxtaposition, You know what I mean? Like, it's like, this book is full of bad fucking things, but also it was easy to read. I don't know. So all in all, didn't love the ending. Hard content, especially for somebody who, like, I don't really purposely read extreme horror. Like, this is one of the only a handful of books that I've picked up knowing it's gonna make me queasy. Pick it up at your own risk. I didn't think it was terrible, but I didn't think it was great either. All right, last book I'm just going to touch on briefly. This is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, and this was published in 2023. I did a full review. If you'd like to watch that, I'll try to remember to leave a clicker. But basically, this is a book about two siblings who have to come together after the deaths of their parents, and they had to figure out, like, what to do with their parents' belongings. What do you do with, you know, 70, 80 years of somebody's life, like, left behind? The siblings themselves don't have a great relationship, so there's lots of tension, and then weird shit starts happening in the house. So, it's a great book, a fucking great book. This was definitely easily the best book I read this month. I liked it so much. So if you want to hear more on that, make sure to watch my full in-depth review. But I just find it kind of redundant to film one of those and then to, like, you know, rehash it again over and over and over, because undoubtedly I'll be talking about this book again in, you know, later in the year. So really loved it. Think you should pick it up. So those are the books that I managed to finish in February. The short month really kind of threw me off. I thought, you know, that we had more days left, and then it's like, oh no, it is the 27th. Shit, fuck. But it is what it is. Anyway, like I said, that's what I read. Love to know what you guys got up to this month. I hope you had a really great month, and I'd love to hear about it. What else? Make sure to check out, like, my Linktree shit for any sort of links, social media stuff, things of that nature. I'd love to know if you had any thoughts about these couple of books that I finished, especially Brightlands, like that supernatural thing. Like, what did you think about that? Did you like it? Did you feel similar to me? I don't know. I'd love to hear about it though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you later. Goodbye.